You know, deep in the wild, jagged mountains of Tajikistan, there's something being built on a scale that's, well, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around. It's a mega project so absolutely massive, you have to wonder if you could see it from space. Today, we are diving deep into the incredible story of the Rogun Dam.
And look, this isn't just another big wall of concrete. We are talking about a literal man-made mountain being built from scratch. The ambition here is it's absolutely staggering.
Which, of course, brings us to the biggest question of all, right? Why on earth would you pour so many resources into building a mountain of rock in a place this remote? Well, the answer is woven into the very fabric of Tajikistan itself.
To even begin to understand, you first have to grasp the sheer scale. When this thing is finally finished, the Rogun Dam is going to stand at a record-breaking 1,100 feet tall. But you know, a number like that, it's kind of hard to picture.
So, let's put it into perspective. If you took the iconic Eiffel Tower and stood it right next to this dam, the dam would actually be taller. Now think about that for a second. One is this famous, delicate-looking icon of iron, and the other is just a colossal mountain of solid rock and earth. That really drives home the mind-boggling mass we're dealing with.
So why? Why the crazy height? Why this epic scale? To get that, we need to talk about the geography of Tajikistan, because this is a country that's defined by two violent, completely opposite problems.
First off, this is not your typical country landscape. About 90% of Tajikistan is covered by these enormous mountains, with peaks that are just caked in glaciers and snow year-round. And all that ice and snow, it has to go somewhere when it melts. And it all feeds into one place, the powerful Vaksh River.
And here's the crazy part. This creates this absolutely brutal cycle. In the summer, all that melting water turns the river into this terrifying, raging force, causing floods that can literally wipe entire villages off the map. But then, in the dead of winter, the rivers freeze solid, and that leads to these crippling power shortages that plunge the country into darkness, forcing families to get by with just candles. So get this, they have way too much water in the summer and nowhere near enough power in the winter.
A giant dam seems like the perfect solution, doesn't it? Well, yeah, but this idea has been around for decades, and its journey from dream to reality, oh man, it's been anything but smooth. It's a real story of resilience.
The history here is just unbelievable. Work actually started way back in the Soviet era, but when the Union collapsed, the project was completely abandoned. That was followed by years of civil war and crushing poverty. And then, as if that wasn't bad enough, in 1993, a catastrophic flood ripped through the valleys, completely destroying what little they had managed to build. Honestly, most people would have just given up, but not the people of Tajikistan. They refused to let this dream die.
But you have to understand, bringing a dream this big to life doesn't happen without real sacrifice. Every mega project like this casts a shadow, and Rogun is no different. To create a reservoir big enough to finally control that wild Vaksh River, entire valleys had to be flooded. And that meant that around 60,000 people, 60,000, had to leave their ancestral homes and start over somewhere else. That is a staggering human cost.
And this quote really sums up that complexity, doesn't it? Well, the dam is this huge symbol of national pride and progress. It's so important that we remember the difficult sacrifices that were made and the very real expert concerns about the environmental risks that are also part of this story.
Okay, so, beyond the human cost, there's this other massive hurdle, the engineering. I mean, how do you even begin to build the world's tallest dam in a place that's pretty much constantly shaking? Let's get into the genius behind its design.
Right? This is the multi-billion-dollar question. This whole area is a highly active seismic zone. Powerful earthquakes are a constant threat. A normal, rigid concrete dam, it would just shatter like a cracker. So, what do you do?
Well, you do something brilliant. You ditch the concrete altogether. The engineers went with what's called an earth-filled dam. So instead of building a stiff wall, they're literally building a flexible mountain, using millions and millions of tons of rock, gravel, and soil from the area itself.
Now here's where it gets really cool. It's all about the layers. You've got this massive outer shell of rock and dirt that gives it all its weight, but the real secret sauce, it's hidden deep inside. There's this incredibly thick core made of a special waterproof, flexible clay. This design literally turns the entire dam into one gigantic shock absorber.
And honestly, the best way to picture it is to think of Play-Doh. No, seriously, that inner clay core acts just like it. When an earthquake hits and the ground starts to shake violently, the clay can just bend and squish and change its shape without breaking.
The whole structure just adapts. It absorbs the energy instead of fighting it. It's a true masterpiece of engineering.
Okay, so after all those decades of struggle, after the immense cost and sacrifice, and after some truly incredible engineering, what's the ultimate payoff? What does this dam actually do for Tajikistan?
First, let's just acknowledge the price tag. Finishing this beast is going to cost somewhere around $6 billion, with a B. So for that kind of money, the return had better be absolutely game-changing. And you know what? It is.
Deep inside that mountain of rock, there are going to be 6 enormous turbines, and once the water from that reservoir starts rushing through them, they'll generate an unbelievable 3,600 megawatts of clean, renewable electricity. That is enough power to fundamentally change the fate of an entire nation. So what does that really mean for everyday people? Well, for families in the countryside, it means an end to those cold, dark, frustrating winter blackouts. But it's so much more than that. The dam will produce so much surplus energy that Tajikistan can sell it to its neighbors. That creates a whole new source of income for the country, which in turn fuels new jobs and better infrastructure. It's a total game changer. And just to leave you with one final thought on this sheer scale of this thing, by the time they are finished, the workers will have moved enough rock and earth to fill the Great Pyramid of Giza 30 times over. Let that sink in. 30. It's just a monumental, almost mythic undertaking.
So you see, the Rogun Dam is so much more than just a pile of rocks holding back a river. It's a symbol of incredible resilience, it's a masterpiece of engineering, and it's a profound promise for a much brighter future. Which kind of leaves us with one final question to think about. For a nation that has been so completely defined by nature's extremes, can one single project, no matter how colossal, truly change everything?